take a slight pivot. Instead of fight of the year, we're talking about the fighter of the year. And this one, I'll talk about some controversy. Let's get it, brother. All right, man. Fighter of the year. You got, I mean, look at this list. Look at these names right here. Topping off the list, you got Alexander Volkanovski. Only 2 fights in 2022, but he did have 2 title defenses, 1 knockout and 1 decision. And AJ, I want to talk a little bit further about this one because context-wise, you got to think about it, right? You first off demolish the Korean Zombie. You finish him in the 4th round, right? At the end of the day, it was just too much. Like, they had to stop that fight, right? So you did something to somebody who really does not get put it on him like that. Had a fantastic title defense right there. And then, oh yeah, by the way, you also beat Max Holloway 50-45, the man who was the greatest featherweight aside from Jose Aldo. So my thing here is that while 2-0, 1 knockout, 1 decision, that's not impressive. Not really. But then you add 2 title defenses, 1 shutout against literally a dude who nobody would even fathom that would be an option against, and then knocking out the Korean Zombie. I think for that one, you gotta have, that's pretty fantastic. So when you're diving into this fight, fighter of the year, are you diving in like that? Are you looking into context like that? Or are you just looking at the numbers and comparing?
No, I'm diving into the context, Derek, because of the fight, especially at this kind of a level that Alexander Volkanovski is fighting at. You need to take those things in because you're right. On the numbers, 2 fights, 1 finish, 1 decision, 2 title defenses. Sure, it looks good. You know, like there's things there that Volkanovski does right on paper. But for the extra right there, to do that against Max Holloway, to solidify, and for somebody in myself who thought Max Holloway won both of those first 2 fights, to come back in that 3rd fight, handle all that stuff, and absolutely put it to one of the greatest ever do it, the Blessed Express Max Holloway. Very impressive Volkanovski, man. You can't not include this one into fight, or you can't include Alexander Volkanovski in fighter of the year, man. This dude is very impressive and looking and has his sights set for a very explosive 2023 too. It's hard to overlook this guy.
That's right. Now, how could you go wrong with Islam Makhachev? I mean, 2-0, you win a UFC title, you knocked one person out, you submitted the other one. But let's be honest about this one, man. The most impressive win was the title win against Charles Oliveira. The other win was against Bobby Green. I'm not saying that that's not a good win, but I mean, in comparison to some of these other guys, all right, man. Zheng Wei Li, 2-0. She wins her UFC title against the Cookie Monster, Carla Esparza. Knocked out Joanna Jędrzejczyk and submitted Esparza, man. So, I mean, for that one, in terms of just like a fighter, not even just a women's fighter, but just as a fighter, that's pretty impressive, yeah?
Oh, yeah, man. A couple champions under your belt, now a belt around your waist. I think Zhang Wei Li definitely made her mark for the year. Again, though, the one thing that does this for me, the activity level, and maybe it's not their fault at all. You can't blame them for the activity level. It's hard to get championship fights going that often, but you see people with 3 fights, 4 fights in the year taking any division. It's hard to put those numbers against it, but I do agree the backstory is there for Zhang Wei Li.
That's right. And then I didn't even think about that, but you're completely right about that. She did it against 2 champions, 2 multiple-time champions. Was Joanna a multiple-time champion? I know Carla was for sure, but either way, man, impressive work. And then you got Poatan, man, Alex Pereira. Like, come on, bro. 3-0, 2 knockouts, 1 decision. You win UFC title. You beat the style bender. I mean, for a lot of people, I don't even think they question it. They're just like, you give it to Pereira. Why would you not give it to Pereira? He's clearly the fighter of the year. Now, I think that he had a very impressive run and had the most massive leap to the top of the division. But then at the same time, the guys that he fought before that, I mean, you had Bruno Silva and you had Andreas Michailidis, right? So like the Bruno Silva one, that was back and forth. That was competitive. That was one where you saw, okay, even though Pereira was definitely winning the fight, you got a couple chinks in his armor right there, man. So like very impressive, but the most impressive aspect of it truly does come in. You knocked out the style bender in a fight that you were losing, but you knocked out the style bender nonetheless. What do you think?
This one, man, for me, maybe not the most impressive fighter of the year because the value of his opponents may not have been as high, but for somebody that took over the UFC, made an impact within the shortest amount of time, that is your year of a fighter. And I mean, to me, that is the most impressive thing about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And then lastly, man, Leon Edwards. And this one is the toughest because on paper, you did the least amount of work, 1-0, but you won a UFC title. But here's the context. You got a knockout versus the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the UFC, in the world, man. So like ultimately, that carries the most weight. I'm sorry. I don't care. Across the board, that carries the most weight. You knocked out the number 1 pound for pound guy and you won the title. I mean, come on, bro. What more can you ask for? But with that being said, let's talk about a winner, brother. Here we go. All right, my man. My fighter of the year. give it to the Alexander the Great Volkanovski right here. You can even see I got my man right here on the poster when he did UFC 266 or something like that. Either way, man, I honestly think the win over Max Holloway, a shutout win against, the Blessed Express, the dude who just was steamrolling everybody, and the finish over the Korean Zombie, 2 title defenses, man, and you've set your sights up for a fantastic 2023 moving up a weight class, trying to challenge Islam Makhachev, another dude who's like arguably on this list. Like, come on, bro, what are we talking about here? I thought this was fantastic. I think I felt like when I made this pick, I might get criticized for this one a little bit because I don't think people value Alexander Volkanovski's work the same way that I do, given just like who he did it against. But nonetheless, man, I think that this takes the cake over all the rest of them, given the quality of opponents right here. You have 2 Hall of Famers right here that you just steamrolled, basically. So that's my pick. But what do you think about that one, AJ?
I can see why some people might think that they'll give you a little flack for that pick, Derek. I like it. Coming in, solidifying against one of the greatest to ever do it, solidifying that you beat this dude 3 times in a row, nobody else to challenge you, and then you have the foresight to set yourself up for a very impactful 2023. Yeah. How can you not like it, man? This dude's checking all the boxes right there.
That's right, but it's not consensus. So, my man, let's talk about it. Who you got for Fighter of the Year?
Derek said it might not be consensus, but I'm going Alex Paeta, man. And this one hurt a little bit. This one, as an Izzy fan, one of my favorite fighters in the game, to see the way the fight ended and all that stuff, it hurt to put Alex Paeta as my Fighter of the Year. But what can you say, dude? This dude came in 3 fights. He said, I've knocked you out in 2 other fights in our other sport, but now you're the king over here, bro. I'm coming to take your crown. And sure enough, that's what he does in 3 fights in the UFC. This dude climbs all the way to where it takes people many people multiple years, 12, 13, 14 years to finally reach the pinnacle. This dude does it in 3 fights, and working with some of the best to do it and living the life, man. It was hard to pick anybody else to get it done because of how impactful Alex Pereira was on the sport of MMA. To me, that's the year that took over, and it's Alex Pereira, man. This is a hard one to not pick, even though I'm a big Izzy fan, and I'm betting on Izzy for the knockout for coming back. But I'm just saying, geez. This is very impressive either way.